Thanks for staying with us. Stakeholders have called on Nigeria's government to provide more funding for basic education to enhance digital learning in Nigerian schools. The call was made at an event in Abuja to commemorate Day of the African Child.
If you look at the African children and the schools, a lot of them are not digital compliant. So as the world is moving even to the AI era, Nigeria is even yet to cope with traditional technology system to support education. So we are using the Day of the African Child to highlight these issues and acknowledge the fact that the right of the child is a fundamental right that every stakeholder must work hard to support and promote.
I think the federal government should take, control in terms of highly funding it, specifically, without channeling money to any agencies that will take part of those money to do issues of administrative purposes. Our primary schools are in bad shape. Even this school that we are doing this program today, most of the classroom have no chairs. So it tells you a lot of things that if a child cannot sit down properly in an environment, and you are talking about digital, space, that means we'll have a very long way to come. And these children must be able to meet up compared to those of them in primary schools.
The world is progressing rapidly and digital learning is becoming the order of the day. It emphasizes more than just a traditional style of learning. Digital learning allows students to effortlessly access the best curriculum.
Technology has become the backbone of our social, economic and political success and can help us to keep up with the demands of our future. And one exciting way, technology has been used to benefit us all in the area of education.
It's really a delight to, listen to those kids. I mean, they have a good understanding of what, they need for their future. Well, we're joined now by Sunday Okereke, who is the Executive Director of Project Hope Alive. And from our offsite studio, we have the Director of Resource Mobilization at Action Aid, Andrew Mamedu. Thank you both of you gentlemen for joining us tonight on News Night.
Welcome aboard.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the African child. Exactly what is the situation of the African child today in 2023 as we talk about the need to ensure that they're not left behind in the digital space. Okereke, let me start with you.
Well, as we already highlighted in the program, let me give a brief historical background. When this particular day was set aside by the African Union, when it was OAU at the time, and it's to commemorate the memory of the Soweto children who displayed a lot of bravery and in marching and protesting against poor quality education and for them to be taught in their language. Right. And a lot of things happened at the time. That was in 1976, before the AU recognized this particular day. And since 1991, when this day was instituted, a lot of effort have been made to highlight the condition of the African child. And I said this, children, as we know, are in the vulnerable demography. A lot of them cannot have the access to speak for themselves. So this particular day is used to highlight the problems that children face and, most importantly, galvanize stakeholders' commitment towards promoting the welfare and protection of children. In Nigeria today, I made a statement that children of Nigeria even suffers double jeopardy because we are dealing with terrorism, insurgency, banditry, over 20 million out-of-school children, and a lot of digital poverty exists, within the country, even amongst the adults, not to talk about the children. So in Nigeria, we have to double our efforts if we must improve on the welfare of children. And I also stated that if you look at our governance institutional design, most of them focus attention on the care for adults. Most of the activities that support children are actually carried out by non-state actors, NGOs, CSOs, and what have you. And government, for instance, today did not prioritize the commemoration of this day. And all the activities you could see came from individuals and groups who care that the voices of children should be heard in the country. So the state of the Nigerian children, and indeed African children, is in despair, but there is hope because efforts are being put in place. Yeah.
Okay, Sunday, you spoke about the origin of this, the action in Soweto, South Africa in 1976, the protest of students. I remember it was about the use of, they were protesting the apartheid government's use of Afrikaans as language of instruction in some Bantu schools. This was a fight for identity. The bottom line of that fight is for identity. Speak to us, before we go to Andrew. Sunday, speak to us about the importance of language in molding the identity of the African child.
Well, you know, identity gives you confidence, it gives you courage, it gives you expression. You know, it positions you as a person to know that you count in the world. Because without identity, you are a nobody, without a name. And like you rightly pointed out, part of that protest was the fact that they need to be taught in their language so that they are very expressive, so that they can trace their root and represent, you know, their own culture. And also, more importantly, that the educational system was very poor because you could see the gap between what they were being taught and what was available to the, you know, the apartheid group. So for me, identity and language is very critical. And today in our schools, I remember as a student, a pupil in the primary school, vernacular was you pay. If you speak vernacular at the time, you have to pay. So I will have to make progress from that and see how we effectively integrate what we do. Yeah.
Let's bring in Andrew Mamedu, Director, Resource Mobilization Action Aid. Thank you very much for your patience. I mean, to think that as far back as 1976, some children actually stood up for their rights, saying, look, you cannot teach us in Afrikaans, would rather be taught in our mother tongue, in our own language. That's courage. Today's African child, would you say he or she has a similar courage, or is it that they're just being silenced? What needs to be done to improve the lot of the African child to ensure that their voices are not silenced?
Thank you very much. I think clearly we have to identify that in this instance, the child is the rights holder, and then the government, the parents, the traditional rulers, religious institutions are the duty bearers. So clearly we have a right to protect the rights of the child. It is not their responsibility or their duty to get these things to happen. So it is a duty of the rights holders to make them happen. Definitely, increasingly, it's getting worse. You hardly would find children that will be able to take such actions that the children in Soweto took in 1976, which was brave, and of course over hundreds of children were lost on that day. Even currently, if you have adults going out to speak out and to protest, you have police coming and say, oh, you don't have a permit to do this. Not to talk of children coming out to do that. But there is room, a lot of room for us to build the capacity of the children. They have to be brave enough to speak their mind. It is their right. So it is not, you're not doing them a favor. So if you go to a school, you commission a school, and the commissioner or the governor comes there and you are clapping for the governor. No, it is a right of the child to have access to that education. It is a right of the child to have access to good teaching environment. But clearly, there is a major digital divide. It is worse off in the rural communities than in the urban centers. And it is worse off between the rich and the poor. Growing up, when I started using computer, clearly I had to go to a computer school at the age and started learning gradually. But of course, right now, my kids, they don't need to go to any computer school. From primary school, primary 3, primary 4, they all have computers and they start working with the computer. So access to information, capacity building will be able to help them exhibit that courage and exhibit that right to be able to demand for such things right now.
So glad you mentioned capacity building, because I'm particularly concerned about the global competitiveness of the African child. Open us up to the chances that we have to really encourage the African child in their welfare and in their career, and of course in their life paths for global recognition.
Yeah, clearly, I think we keep depreciating. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we built a school in Niger State, a secondary school, and we had children graduate from primary to secondary. Now, the primary school where the children were graduating from, they were sitting on the floor, on stones. So they sit on stones and they write on their lap. So that's how, from primary 1 to primary 6, that's how they took their lessons. So having built a school that was furnished, had tables and chairs, just like the presentation you made, I said, oh, they didn't have chairs in those schools. Now, it's practical particularly in rural schools, public schools. Now, having grown in that for the 6 years, coming to secondary school for the first time, having a desk and a chair, we had children struggling to settle in to be able to take notes on tables. So they sat on the chair, they took their notes and still put it on their laps to be able to write properly. That is what they've been accustomed to. So how would we compare this with the Europe, the Americas, so countries that have way gone? We have countries that have instead right to digital information. So we are still far away. We are still struggling with should right to education be justiciable? No, you cannot hold the government accountable. Our constitution says that so long as resources are available. So running away from making it justiciable. So but those countries are already moved far past that. They've made it justiciable. It's compulsory. You can actually take the government to court if they deny you access to those. And so we have a long way to go. But guess what? We are competing in the same global environment. So it's the same job market. So there's a global market right now. It's the same digital space, global digital space that we are competing with. And our children, either from the rich, the poor, from the urban, the rural community, from this part of the world and from the northern part of the world, they will compete in that global space. And if you are not prepared, clearly we are not, definitely we are not. So yes, we have a new administration. This becomes an opportunity. So we're saying clear actions are around the five pillars that the government is coming up with, including the economy. So one area that relates to the economy is this aspect of the digital, looking at our digital economy, which of course we have a policy around that right now. So how do we prepare our children, ensure that their rights are guaranteed, and ensure that they can compete in the global community? But part of the global north, they've gone way far ahead of us. So if we have to build the capacity of the children, we have to invest a whole lot more to be able to catch up, not what we are investing in education or in healthcare of these children. Remember, it is their right, so it is not a favor that we are doing to them.
It is their right. Okay, let me come to you very quickly before we wrap. I mean, UNICEF is calling on governments, individuals, organizations to help in bridging this digital gap. What needs to be done very, very quickly? I mean, there's a new administration. What needs to be done to close this digital gap very quickly?
Well, I think obviously to change our framework. The primary school system is under the local government, as our constitutional design. And the local government don't even have the resources to power the primary schools where we have most of the children. We have UBEC, yes, who works through the state suburb and to do intervention. But we could see that the design of the primary school is just for basic learning. We have not started deliberate investment. So for me, is to devote a trust fund that will focus on digitalization of the schools. This is what we have to do. Have a trust fund that is focused on just digital learning in our primary schools, so that those funds go direct into, no matter how remote those schools are, they are able to be digitally compliant. And so that the students, when they see computer in their secondary or university, will not feel that this is some kind of an oracle that needs to be worshipped. So this is key, that will make sure that the primary school, secondary schools, and the rural areas have access to digital learning.
Thank you, Sunday. Let me come back to you, Andrew. You spoke earlier that the African child is not prepared for global competitiveness, and that worries me as much as it does you, meaning that we don't have, our African children are lacking the necessary exposure. With or without the exposure, talk to us about how we can help the African child build a healthy self-esteem.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to COVID. COVID taught us a big lesson. So we're not able to go to schools. And guess what? A lot of private schools were functional. If you go to public schools that have computer, most of them, just a few states, like I know Edo State is doing a whole lot around putting technology in their schools. But if you go to most of the public schools, if you have a computer, probably you find it in the head teacher's office, locked up. You have a protector. It's like a shrine, so it's kept there. But if you go to the private school, it's separate. It's different. Now we want to build the confidence of these children. So the only way to build the confidence of these children is to give them access to this technology. Give them access to it, guided access, I must say. So they have to have guided access to this technology, and they are able to efficiently use it. So by the time they keep using it, I gave an example of my child. So after a while, first week to second week, after that, they could run with it, and they're able to do it. All that children, that's what happens. Give them access to that. They're able to deal with it. There are positives, of course, there are also negatives with using it, but they have to be guided to use them. If we do not create those spaces, those opportunities for them to have access to that, definitely they would, when they go to write JAM, they have to use technology, they have to go for training upon training, and sometimes some of them fail JAM because they are not able to apply and use those technology.
It's a good place to live it. Andrew Mamedu is Director, Resource Mobilization Action Aid, and Sunday Okereke, Executive Director, Project Hope Alive. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for what you do.